Chemical services one-on-one. I know that there's a lot of confusion about chemical services, relaxers, curl reformation, perms, keratin treatments, amino acid treatments, and heat training. Heat training isn't necessarily a chemical service you can use to alter the bond formation within your hair shaft, coloring the hair, and lightening the hair. These are all different services, and if we put them in their proper perspectives and understand them all, then I think it'll be a lot easier to understand who should do which service, who shouldn't do which service, and all of that stuff. So I'm gonna break all of these things down in this video, so if you want a deeper understanding, then keep on watching. Before we get started, make sure you go ahead and subscribe here to my channel, and once you subscribe, be sure to click on that bell notification so you're notified every time I post another video. Okay, so this is going to go in no specific order. Lightening the hair and coloring the hair are two completely different things. When you lighten your hair, what you are doing, and this is whether you are relaxed or natural, so stay with me. So when we're talking about lightening the hair, all you're doing is opening the cuticle and removing pigment. All right, now coloring the hair is a lot different, because when you're coloring the hair, you are depositing pigment inside of the hair's cuticle. Right now, you do have high lift color, and high lift color has a color formulation that allows the cuticle to lift a little bit higher, which then allows the product to be able to extract a certain amount of pigment depending on what that color formulation is, right? Depending on what the color is. For example, sometimes you'll see something that says 1N. 1N stands for 1 neutral, right? And the actual color scale for a professional hairstylist goes from 0 or 1 to 10, and 1 being like jet black and 10 being platinum blonde, right? So 1N stands for black and it's neutral tone. So if you see something that says maybe 7HTL or something like that, that's going to mean that it's taking you to a level 7, and it's going to be high lift, so it will lift the cuticle and lift some of the pigment out. All right, now moving along to color. Color is deposit only, and color does not lift color, right? I remember when I was in cosmetology school, that was all of the hairstylists that were training me's favorite thing to say. Something that most people had to understand, that if you want to, let's say, get your hair from a level 1 to a level 12, then what you would have to do is get your hair lightened. You couldn't get your hair just simply colored. That's why it's a drastic price difference from you just getting your hair colored like just a regular black to you getting your hair from a chocolate brown to like a platinum blonde, right? So that is coloring your hair and lightening. Then when we're going through permanent and semi and all of that, is just a different layer of hair color that is on the cuticle. But anytime we're talking about anything other than permanent hair color, it's not penetrating the hair shaft. It's only putting a layer of color of artificial pigment on the hair shaft, right? This is why if you see somebody that has like the beautiful browns, right, you may go into the beauty supply store and you get a bottle of beautiful browns and put that on your hair, and like, my hair gonna be this color, and then you rinse it off and your hair is still black. Well, that's because that is the deposit only color. If you want your hair lighter, you have to lighten your hair, removing your natural pigment to put new artificial pigment in. All right, so that is lightening your hair and then coloring it, and that's why you have all of these different levels of coloring the hair, because it's just so many different things that go into color formulations. So if you want a detailed breakdown of the real deep thing about color, because to be honest, color is a video all within itself. That's really hard for me to try to break down really quickly, as you could probably tell. So let me know in the comments whether or not you want a video just strictly for color. because I'll do it. Curl reformation. When we're talking about curl reformation, or I should say curl reformation, I should say hair reformation in general. This is when we're talking about relaxers. Relaxers is something that a woman who has a naturally curly hair or a wavy hair, something that she or he will get to take away the curls in your hair, right? But then if you get a perm, you're doing the opposite. A perm is something that somebody with naturally straight hair is going to get so they can put in artificial curls in their hair, right? So you get a relaxer to relax your natural curls and get straight, and then you get a perm to give yourself artificial curls, right? Perms and curl reformations is the same thing. So when we're talking about a jerry curl, or when we're talking about a jerry curl, or when we're talking about wave nouveau, the original, right? What that is basically a perm and a relaxer put together. So what you do, you first relax the hair, taking away the hair is a natural curl pattern, and then you are using another product to reformat the curl. So you just simply do a relaxer and a permanent wave together, and that is a curl reformation, or a curly perm. It's the same thing, and it's been around for freaking ever. Like, it goes back. This is where most of the confusion comes from, right? Because most people think that a relaxer and a perm and then a keratin treatment is the same thing, and it is not. So when we're dealing with a relaxer, or when you're getting a perm or a curly perm or whatever, the three that we just talked about, you are dealing with the inner cortex of the hair shaft. Remember that the hair shaft is broken down into 3 different layers. You have the cuticle, which is the outer layer, then you have the cortex, and then you have the medulla, which not everyone has. All right, so when we are talking about curl reformation, you have to get past the cuticle layer and into the cortex, because it's within the cortex of the hair shaft that your bonds live. And the more bonds you have, the more sulfur atoms you have within the hair shaft, the curlier your hair is, right? So when you're getting a relaxer, you're literally going within the cortex and removing protein, right? But whenever you are doing a cuticle treatment, like a keratin treatment puts a coating on top of the hair shaft. So you're not going inside of the cuticle, and you're not going deep within the cortex, because that's not the purpose of a keratin treatment. The purpose of a keratin treatment is to lock down the hair shaft, right? And most of the time, whenever I was standing behind the chair, I did not do keratin treatments, but I did know a woman that worked in the same salon as me, the same studio salons as me, that I would refer people to, because she was good for Keratin Treatments. But the only clients that I would recommend to her, and the only clients that she would take, which is another reason why I didn't have a problem with referring people to her, because she just didn't let anybody get a keratin treatment. People had to book consultations first, and if you did not have high porosity hair, she wasn't given a keratin treatment. It's just not something that was happening. Simply because the purpose of a cuticle treatment, listen to what I'm saying, a cuticle treatment is to put a coating on top of the cuticle. Keratin treatments were mainly, at first, everybody uses it now, which is fine, do what you want to do, but originally when keratin treatments first came out, it was never marketed towards you as a replacement for a relaxer. It was only marketed towards you as something that you could do to control frizz, or if you were somebody who, let's say, swims for a living, or you swim on a daily basis, it's a part of you working out, then you would get a keratin treatment, and you're not really worried. As a hairstylist, I'm not worried about somebody who's swimming all of the time getting a keratin treatment, because is not going to sit on the hair shaft that long, because chlorine does the same thing to the hair shaft that lightener does. So the chlorine's literally going to eat away at the keratin that's on the hair shaft slowly, so it'll never have the opportunity to damage a hair shaft of a person who's swimming all the time, or if you're a person who works out all the time and you're always sweating in the head and your hair is always wet, then something like a keratin treatment or an amino acid treatment or something would be really good for you, but only if you have high porosity hair. And to be honest, I still don't really recommend it then, because it's something that you would almost always have to do, because it's like weaning your hair gonna be a crackhead, like a keratin crackhead. Your hair not gonna know what to do, because all you is only gonna know what to do when keratin is on it. There are pros and cons to both. When we're talking about the cons of relaxers, the con of a relaxer is everybody's not a candidate for a relaxer. And for example, if you are somebody who has extremely high porosity hair, I do not recommend you getting a relaxer at all. If you're a person who has any damage or any scalp inflammation or anything going on within the follicle, you are not someone who is a candidate for a relaxer, simply because you already have abrasions and too many openings within the hair shaft. And a relaxer or any type of curl reformation treatments only job is to open the cuticle and go into the cortex. So if the cuticle is already damaged, you don't want to get a relaxer or perm or a curly perm, anything like that. Remember, a curly perm is not better than a relaxer. A curly perm is a relaxer and a perm at the same time. It's two chemical services put together. That's what it's about. And when we're talking about the different brand names, like the Wave Nouveau or the Jerry Curl or the Gina Curl, it's the same exact chemical process. It's just a different formation, but it's the same thing. All right. You have like Brazilian blowouts, keratin treatments, Brazilian blowouts, keratin treatments, silk amino acid treatments. These are all the same thing, right? And the thing is, a con with the cuticle treatments, the problem with that is, like I said, if you're a person who already has a low porosity hair, your cuticle's already extremely tight. That's the problem. So the very last thing you want to do is get something else, some other type of service that is going to cause the cuticle to be, compacted any tighter than it already is. It's gonna do a lot more harm than good. Understand that damage to the hair shaft is still going to affect the hair's follicle, because your hair shaft is still attached to the blood supply. So the hair shaft is still sending signals to the hair's follicle. And when the hair shaft experiences a lot of stress, whether that's mass amounts of mechanical damage, stress in your everyday life, over processing your hair with color or over processing your hair with chemicals or anything like that, sends a signal to your hair's cuticle, right, to the hair's follicle, and this pushes the hair into telogen effluvium. So a lot of us, myself included, because that happens to me, but for hidradenitis suppurativa, right, if I have an outbreak in my scalp or just in my body, if I have a really bad outbreak, then my whole body like kind of goes into shock to protect itself, and then I'll experience telogen effluvium in a couple of areas, right? That's what I share with you guys in my last couple of videos. If you over process the hair, if you over process the hair with chemicals or anything like that, then what happens is you do trigger the hair shaft to go into telogen effluvium. And with telogen effluvium, that's not your hair falling out permanently. Your hair goes into a resting stage. All right, this is something that I learned as I'm repairing my body from dealing with different bouts with HS. So unless you have extreme follicle death, you can always bring the hair out of that resting phase. All right, so that is one of the main cons, but of course the pros of it, is all manageability for me. As it pertains to hair growth, you getting a relaxer, you getting a perm, you getting a curly perm, anything, any cuticle treatment is not going to help you grow your hair. What it will do is make your practices that help retain length easier, right? For example, if your problem with retaining length is you combing your hair and your hair being hard to manage, right, then getting a relaxer will help you retain length because you're not breaking your hair off as much. So that would be a pro. And then as it pertains to like keratin treatments, if you're a person who goes swimming all the time, then a extreme pro would be for you that coating of artificial keratin that is put on the hair shaft is so thick that it makes it harder for the chlorine to penetrate the hair shaft, so your hair doesn't break off as much from the chlorine. So these are cons as it pertains to cuticle treatments, right? But again, only for somebody who has high porosity hair. In my opinion, all of these chemical services are best if performed by a professional, like a good one, not a dusty one, a good one. And then if you're going to do it yourself, then girl, take a look. It's in a book, because like some of the stuff that y'all be doing online, it just don't work and it's not a good idea, so you should stop.